Newcastle are one of the wealthiest clubs in the entire world and therefore should have one of the best teams in the entire world, but due to pesky regulations they don't. And this makes signing the right players tricky. But who are the right players? Welcome to Sensible Transfers, where we look for weaknesses in squads and identify solutions for those problems. We're not picking the players based on rumour or gossip, no! We're doing it based on tactics, data, and opinion, and a little bit of magic. But to work out who the right players for Newcastle are, we need to look at the squad and identify some problems. And what we can see here is problem 1. This is a good first team, but not great. They can improve the squad depth and the first team. And if we look at the wider squad, we can identify these 3 specific positions: right wing over here, centre forward, and central defence. Problem 2, they need to bring down the average age of the squad because they are old. As you can see here from the analyst, Newcastle had the 3rd oldest average age of a team in the Premier League last season. And problem 3 is they need young players who can develop and star in the future, or who can at least hold their value and be resold later for more profit. Because for context, we need to look at where Newcastle are. They don't want to be in the same situation they just were, where they had to sell Elliot Anderson and Yakuba Minte just to meet PSR regulations. So they don't want to be selling these players when they want to keep them. And so we need to think about how much money they actually realistically have and what they'll spend on. I think they might spend big if there's a star player that's available, like Michael Elise, who they're interested in, but more or less they'll go for players who are within an undervalued section or the young developed section, or who are going to cost not too much money overall. Let's start with the right wing position. I like it. Now, if we look at some data from last season, what we see is that Anthony Gordon and Miguel Almiron are the ones who are carrying the ball most progressively. So lots of progressive carries up the wings. It's very important to what Eddie Howe wants. And we have to think about how Newcastle actually play, because when they're on the ball, what tends to happen is that you get a triangle of the right winger, a central midfielder, and the right back who will join in. So what you often get, last season was Guimaraes rather than Tonali, but we'll put Tonali for here, is Almiron might move inside the pitch here to attack these spaces. Then you'll get one of the midfielders will be around here, and the right back will overlap to try and get balls into the box. And Trippier is one of Newcastle's most productive players with passes and crosses from this sort of position. But they can all swap around. So you want to be able to have this nice little working triangle. So you need a player who is probably left-footed, who wants to attack inside here. You can go past players and carry it, but you can also create chances, because on the other side of the pitch, what you have is the back 4 becomes mostly a 3 with Burn over here. And then what you get is Anthony Gordon will carry the ball, but also attack these areas here. Another thing to consider is you probably want a player, if Gordon is the one carrying it the most, which is what happens most of the time, you want someone who can crash the box and arrive to try and score goals at this back post, because we know that Newcastle like to get the ball into the box in exactly that way. As you can see here from this lovely graphic from The Athletic. Now you've got Gordon mostly making those carries over this side here, and these are the passes and crosses. So you can see they want this kind of cut back into this key area to get the goals. That's what we're looking for. Now, they've been linked with a few players already. One of them is Nico Gonzalez of Fiorentina, another is Anthony Elanga of Nottingham Forest, formerly Man United, and also Noni Madueke of Chelsea. But the one that makes the most sense to me out of those, and is very sensible, is actually Nico Gonzalez of Fiorentina. And that is because of the things we were just talking about. Now, Gonzalez can play either side on the wing, but also up front. But what you get from him as a right winger is he often arrives at the back post to score goals, and he scores a lot of headers as well. So he crashes the back post. That kind of profile is quite useful for what Newcastle want. And Eddie Howe likes players who can play multiple positions. And he works hard out of possession too, as you can see from his FBref profile here. But Gonzalez is also good at getting the ball into those exact areas that you want the winger to put the ball into if you're a Newcastle manager. And here's an example of this against Olympiacos in the Europa Conference League final. A fine game, if ever you've seen one. Now here's Gonzalez taking on his man. The defender wants to try and keep him away from going past him down to the line and try and show him inside. But because Gonzalez is left-footed, he's got a bit of a problem. He doesn't know what to do with him. Now Gonzalez is able to try and take him towards the byline. The defender thinks he's going to go there and just open his body to try and do it, but gets turned inside out because he turns one way and then reverses back the way, leaving this player in no man's land. And that frees up the space for him to pull the ball back for that exact golden area on the penalty spot, and then his teammate ends up just missing the ball completely and the chance is gone. But Gonzalez is everything that Newcastle would like, would be available for probably a reasonable amount of money, and would do the things they want them to do. But he's 26, and so in a few years' time when they want to sell him, he might not have the same value you'd want from a player like that. You want to still have your speed and acceleration in those years. And so maybe we need to look for someone else. Another player who's much younger, who might do some of the things we want them to do, is Johan Bakayoko. But the problem with Bakayoko is we already talked about him a lot in the Spurs video. Alex Barker explained what he does very, very well there. So probably he's not exactly what they want either, because they don't want to have an outside winger. What they really want is a young, exciting talent who can come inside the pitch and combine with those players on the right side, but also create and score. And so my first sensible transfer pick is Francisco Conceição. He currently plays for Porto, He was playing for Portugal in the Euros as well. This is a high-level future wonder kid. This is what you get from this sort of player. Might not be ready just yet, so perhaps it's not as sensible as we want, but if we look at what he does already, we can see that it's a lot of what Newcastle will be looking for. And as his numbers show, he looks like quite the player already, but it's hard to tell players who've been in the Eredivisie and the Portuguese league whether they'll be ready for the Premier League. We don't know, but you can see here, there's an example playing at the highest level against France in the Euros. Here is Conceição on the right wing, very similar position to what we had with Gonzalez a second ago. And see what he's going to do is he's got two players marking him, so one's trying to stop him going to the line, one's trying to stop him moving inside the pitch. But he has a plan to get past both, and that is just to dummy his way past them by pretending to go inside but moving the ball past both, sprints to the line, is able to take past them, and then drops the ball to the exact same golden position that Ronaldo then skies and completely misses the shot. But Conceição might not be the player you need him right now. He's definitely going to turn into that sort of player, and that's why for me, he'd be quite a sensible option. But there's another, and I bet you can't guess who this is. My sensible transfer pick for Newcastle is Bryan Mbeumo of Brentford. When's the last time you thought of him? You never think of him, but he's really, really good. Look at his numbers. His FPRef profile doesn't make him look as amazing as some other sorts of players, but look at this. Mbeumo has provided 15 and 17 goals and assists over the last 2 seasons in the Premier League playing for Brentford. So that's pretty impressive for me anyway. But how about this? His shot creating actions per 90 are also very high, and if you compare his 3.77 per 90 to Newcastle's last season, he profiles just below, or scores just below, Guimaraes and Anthony Gordon and Trippier. And he might not be cheap, but he only has 2 years left in his deal and has said that he would quite like to play for a team that's playing in all the big competitions like Champions League. And Newcastle have ambitions for that as well, Brentford probably do. But Newcastle were just there. It might be sensible, but it's not all about scoring goals. You also have to stop them going into your own goal net. And to do that, you need good centre-backs. And what Newcastle have is Botman and Shearer, who are both good centre-backs, but they need more depth. They brought in Lloyd Kelly from Bournemouth, who plays on the left usually, and Jamal Lascelles is still there as well, but they need more. And so they've been linked with Mark Gahey, and Mark Gahey makes sense for a lot of reasons, because if you bring Gahey into the team, he can play on both sides, but he does tend to play on the left for Crystal Palace and England, and from that side, he's right-footed, he can hit diagonal passes out this way. But the thing with Gahey is he likes to carry the ball, and because Newcastle are short really, at right centre-back, that's probably where he would fit in here. So we're looking at a player who can carry the ball. And why is carrying the ball so important? Well, I'll tell you. And it's because of out-of-possession play from your opponent. So if you're trying to build out from the back, most teams now, or a lot of teams, play with a man-to-man out-of-possession system. And so that means that every single player is covered and no one's free. And so a good way to break the lines in is to get the ball over to, say, Mark Gahey over here, is that he can then bring the ball forward. And this breaks the opposition structure, because if he goes, it means a player has to go to him. Does he go? It leaves Guimaraes free. Does he go? It leaves Trippier free. But Gahey would be expensive. He'd be 60-something million pounds. So perhaps it's not as sensible as you want, although he is English and it helps with your homegrown rules. But the thing to consider is that Fabian Schär will be the first choice right centre-back if he's fit. And so you have room then to bring in a centre-back who is young and can learn his trade and become a superstar in the future. So you've got that kind of room to play with. And so you look at players from across Europe who might fit this description, and you come up with Christian Mosquera, who's currently playing at Valencia and doing very, very well. He's played for Spain in the Olympics just recently and has already got 2 seasons playing for Valencia at La Liga. And you can see his numbers aren't looking great, but when you watch him, you see a player who can pass the ball, can carry it, can do everything you want out of possession, but it might not be sensible because he's possibly not ready just yet. He's a future star. So how about a player we know can already play at this level and is a good age, can develop into someone as a future star as well, who could fit in straight away? Well, we then look at players who are already linked, as often is the case in our sensible transfers research, and that is Malick Thiaw, who is at AC Milan. He can play multiple positions, he can play right and left back, he can play both centre-back positions, is a good all-round defender with a high future level. He could be a very sensible option. His numbers look decent on FBref. He's kind of probably the most sensible option they could get in. But enough about centre-backs, I've had enough. What we should do instead is look at strikers, the goal scorers, the real exciting part of the pitch. Newcastle have Alexander Isak, one of the best strikers in the entire league, if not Europe. They also have brought in Osula from Sheffield United, who could be a future star. He can play in the wing, bit of a development project there. And they have Callum Wilson, but Wilson might be sold. And if he goes, this is probably not enough to sustain a Premier League run at trying to get in the top 4 again and bring European football back to St James's Park. So they need someone in this position on the pitch. And I have 3 excellent candidates for you, starting with a player who might be available at a reasonable price, who is an almost guaranteed superstar of the future, although things have gone wrong for him recently, and that is Vitor Roque of Barcelona. fits a couple of things here. This is a wonder kid who's lost his weight at Barcelona at the moment. He can play as a centre forward or on the wing. Could definitely improve an awful lot. He's not really hitting where he is right now, and because Barcelona can't really register him, might get rid of him, he therefore might be available and worth taking a risk on. Now, his FPRF profile doesn't really make it look particularly exciting, but this is a player who people in Brazil have talked about as being one of the next great centre forwards in Brazil. He's a bit like a mini Sergio Aguero, that sort of thing, if he develops into what he could be. And you can kind of see it in his data. He likes to run with the ball. He doesn't have very much dialogue with the midfield. He likes to receive it high up the pitch. He likes to carry it and dribble with the ball. He's quite powerful. That's what you get from Vitor Roque. But he hasn't quite adjusted to life in Barcelona, having come from Brazil. How would Tyneside fare with him? We can't be sure. It's a very different place, different climates. And so therefore, it's not the most sensible. It's in the realms of it. So let's look for another player, someone who can definitely score goals, good dialogue with the midfield, they can be in the right place at the right time, push Alexander Isak for a starting place, and be a reliable backup when he's not available. And that brings us to Santiago Jimenez. And as you can see from his profile here, this is a goal scorer. Jimenez scores a lot of goals. He has good dialogue with the midfield, but he knows where to be and when in a penalty area to score those crucial goals. Learned a lot under Arne Slot over the last couple of seasons. Is worth quite a lot of money. This would be an expensive transfer. And if he's not your guaranteed number 9, it might not make as much sense as certain others. So what we probably want to look for is a player who has resale value in the future, would be happy being a backup option with a rise to a higher league like Newcastle, and who would be available for a reasonable price. And so my very final sensible transfer for Newcastle is Bojan Majowski of Aberdeen. Now you might think I've gone mad, I'm just trying to get more money for the club that I support, but I promise I'm not. I can't tell you how good Majowski is. He's a full Macedonian international, plays regularly for them. He's 25 years old, plenty of resale value. There's lots of clubs in Serie A especially who are looking at him, but he does everything you want of a striker. He's got it all. So he's really good at hold-up play and bringing others into the conversation when you're trying to counter-attack as well. He also works hard out of possession, quite good at positioning, I would say, out of possession, but really good at being in the right place at the right time to score. He scores important goals in big games. He's a big game player. He also scores a lot of goals. And for context, Aberdeen scored 48 goals in the league total last season. Majowski scored 16 of them. He's playing for a team that hardly creates any chances, yet he still gets a lot of them, and he's clinical when he gets those chances. And because his dialogue with the midfield and his off-ball work is so good, that's why he's one of these players I think could work very well as a backup striker for Newcastle. And Eddie Howe likes his team to attack quickly with intensity, so you want a player who can stay up front in the zone and then chase the ball forward and create something. And there's an example of Majowski doing this exact thing against Celtic, who's obviously a big game for Aberdeen to play against. Now, here's Majowski circled, always the furthest player forward, stretching the defence, running on to a long pass forward on his own. He has one defender to beat. This is a long way from goal. This is a difficult chance. You shouldn't really score in this position. The defender should have you. But Majowski is able to take him on, double step over, sends the player the wrong way, goes onto his left foot and curls it into the back of the net to score a crucial goal in a big game for Aberdeen. This is what you want, a big game player. And the thing with Majowski is he'd be available for nothing. He's like £6 to £10 million, which for a striker who scores goals at the highest level is very, very cheap, as you may know. But we should look at what Newcastle's sensible team would look like if they take our transfers on, and it looks something like this. Now, there are too many players on the pitch to compete in regulation football, but Shaw covers both of these sides. You've got Mbeumo over here, Majowski's your backup striker behind Wilson, and also Ostula, who they've got in there. But that's what it could look like.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Amy Lawrence, and Rafa Honigstein. With the latest transfer news and insights on every Premier League story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football, and you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.